the special prosecutors charged the former secretary as well as one other person, Andy Thomas Owusu, with 15 counts of corruption-related offences. The charges were filed at the High Court Criminal Division in Accra on April 28. The charges allege that between January and February 2019, while serving as the IMCIM secretary, Charles Bisu allegedly accepted a total of 35,000 cedis from one Benjamin Ejapon. That was directly through Owusu to fast-track the renewal of an expired mining license for OR Resources Enterprise. And if you were with us yesterday for the morning, we went through all the charges with you and we explained what they all mean. The former secretary of the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, Charles Bisu, he has reacted to the Office of the Special Prosecutor's corruption charges against him. To put simply, he says it is baseless. In a statement dated April 29, Charles Bisu pledged to challenge the OSP's charges vigorously through due process. I don't know whether Helen and Johnny did see this coming or this came as a surprise to them. Johnny?
Well, I mean, the OSP, Mr. Kisegyabi, has not shied away from the fact that he wants to still hold Mr. Charles Bisu, responsible for those corruption or corruption-related activities. He has not shied away from it. You remember that in the past he was declared a wanted person.
That's true.
He went there with his lawyers and he was arrested and granted bail and all of that. So the OSP is very clear in its mind what he wants to do. On the flip side, Mr. Charles Bisu is also very clear in the mind that, look, I have not done anything. I'll fight this.
Since 2019, he has been consistent with his position. He is very innocent. He filed cases at the courts trying to stop the OSP from investigating him and all of that.
So I will also insist on my right and do
exactly
what it is. Now, this new 10, more than 10 charges are now being preferred against him. And he's asking for the public to be measured, to have a lot of restraint and trust the judicial system, because he believes that he has what it takes to win his matter. He doesn't need any mercy, literally, for want of a better expression, and all of that. So we wait. Let's see how things pan out. There's very little we can do. This is what the OSP thinks the man is guilty of. The man says, I'm not guilty. We can only wait.
There's a court that will determine it.
Exactly. We can only wait.
And Helen, Charles Bisu is also pointing out to the timing of the charges. So he says that...
I think you're reading my mind, Crosby, because that paragraph also just stood out to me.
Yes.
It's the last but 3 or so.
Actually, why did you let us finish with our power before you? Why did you make us exit power? And then, is that the tone?
Well, okay, let me read it out. And if we can also get it on the screen so you can follow along with us if you're watching on Facebook. So Charles Bisu says in this press statement, he says the timing of this prosecution occurring under a different government than the one in which I previously served shows the importance of impartial judicial proceedings. It is my sincere hope that this process will allow all parties an equitable opportunity to present evidence and the facts will be evaluated fairly without bias.
The time it is happening, there have been a lot of legal battles that have been started by the AG against former government officials. So the perception is that this is also some form of prosecution. At least that is what Charles Bisu was thinking, that this new administration is championing another, witch hunt against him.
The reason why I'm confused is he says the timing, but this has been raging on since the Tiger PI expose came out. This is 2019, so I'm not too sure why he says the timing. This is not new, is it?
That's why I started by saying that the special prosecutor is very firm in its mind. At the time, Mr. Kisegyabi was lawyer for Anas Anas, right? And he was not the special prosecutor at that time. Remember that it was somebody before Mr. Kisegyabi came into the picture. It was Martin Amidu who was there before Kisegyabi came into the picture. Right. And these matters had come up, earlier in the conversations, just that it wasn't one of the meat of the matter on the OSP's table. But the OSP, as far as we know, as an office, has been consistent in this. If you are held before court, you go and you answer. If you are guilty, we get to know. If you are not guilty, you walk. This whole concept of witch hunting and etc. If we don't take care, we may have people who do things, and then we will say, oh, because we belong to different political, for example, you read the Christian mothers now talking about the fact that CJ is a woman, and when you inject some of those emotional stuff into the conversations, and you're not talking law,
you're leaving the essence of
the matter. That's why I'm happy that Mr. Bisu said, look, exercise restraint public, but let's trust the judicial system. And in the past, it's been demonstrated that when he went to the court, he was able to ventilate his issues, the answers he gave, and the OSP at some point backed down. Right. So if he still believes in the judiciary, which I'm sure he does, there's nothing that prevents him from going ahead to raise the defense, because the OSP, yes, has charged him, but he also has the right to reply.
That's right.
And so must it be.
He's making a few, he has a few expectations. This Galamsey fraud documentary we spoke about yesterday. So he wants the OSP to present the full, complete, and edited and altered version of the video documentary that was referenced in all those proceedings since 2019 to the court, so that Ghanaians will have access to the unvarnished truth and factual evidence, free from distortion or misdirection by external narratives or selective interpretations. Is that a fair concern he should have?
Well, fair concern, of course, if your head is is being put on the chopping board, consistently by a special prosecutor who believes that there's reason for you to have done something, and I always want to bring back the history. Mr. Kisei Jabin has been a long-standing lawyer.
That's right.
Together in that same firm, Mr. Sami Dakun, who also speaks for the special prosecutor's office, was also in that office. All right, both as practicing lawyers for Anas. So clearly, you can say that then, if you're going strictly by the rules of fairness and justice, Mr. Kisei Jabin may be conflicted, because I am the lawyer of the individual who produced the documentary. In the past, in my private practice, I was the lawyer. I still don't know if he does some work for him or his firm does some work for him. But then this work that my client at the time did has now found its space into the qualification of what they term as corruption and corruption-related activities, which Mr. Bisu now is being held for it. If Mr. Bisu feels that there could be certain biases that may be working against him because of
the position he held before,
of Mr. Kisei Jabin back then, and how he still is interested in the matter, it's a fair point to make. But I'm saying that we should not get to the point where every single matter is politicized. Not so long ago, we were talking about the independence of the judiciary, fairness, blah, blah, blah. GBA has written that long thing for us. Everybody is reading. So we know that the courts have to be independent at all costs, the independence of the judiciary, etc. We must not be seen to be coloring the judiciary because our heads are on the chopping board.
Is it too late for that?
Well, the institutions that we created by putting them in the Constitution, right, and by agreeing as a country that we need these institutions, must be institutions that we the people must also help to protect. If we do not help to protect the institutions, and you tend to bastardize the institution because today it is you who is being held by the waist, your trouser is up there, then it becomes a problem. Two things are inevitable when you go to court. You either win or you lose. And so must it be. It's not too late to maintain the dignity of the courts. It is where institutions and CSOs and others try to put a certain coloration on it and try to create in the minds of people that the institution is polarized, is doing something. Look, Ghana has had 6 chief justices, right?
That's right.
All the 5 former chief justices, including even the current one, were appointed by the MPP tradition. Only 1 out of the 6 was appointed by an NDC tradition. So how does it then suddenly become a situation where you get the point? We ought to be very measured in the way we are going about things. We ought to be very, very measured in the way we are going about things. If the Supreme Court is supposed to be on the path of seniority, right? Rightfully, then the Chief Justice who got in 2019, who is many years, we understand, the junior of the current acting Chief Justice, it should not have happened. You get the point. So we, the citizens, must also help the governments that we either elect or police or we either criticize to protect the institutions that give confidence and hope, and not allow the politicians to, because that's for the politicians, they're always looking for an opportunity.
That's right.
To take their pound of flesh, right? And they will always get conspirators to do that with. So we must protect the institutions.
Charles Bisu in 2019, when all of this, if you like, began, he has maintained his innocence and then challenged the entire process through the court and all of that. Now, this is, if you like, another chance for the OSP, who has been following this case since its inception, since its beginning, since the Galamsey fraud, the Galamsey fraud video. Charles Bisu is asking for a few things. He says it should be complete, it should be unedited and all of that. And like Johnny, like you're saying, it will be on the courts to ensure that the right thing is done, and it will be for the person who is accusing, and in this case I'm talking about the OSP, to be able to prove beyond reasonable doubt, like the lawyers say in court, that in fact and indeed Charles Bisu is guilty of these things that it has charged him with. And how this case travels, Helen, maybe this is to you. How this case travels, how important will it be in the fight against corruption? We know that there have been previous attempts to deal with some people who were perceived to be corrupt, and the bottlenecks that the prosecution faced. A case in point is the most recent, when I'm talking about Cecilia Dapa, for instance, and the conversations that surrounded it, the OSP, Ankwanoma, Ambu, Nidri, and all of those things. So if he's able to go through with this, what will it mean?
There's so many, I think, cases that appear to be pending or feel as though they've been left hanging, and the everyday Ghanaian is asking what happens next. And especially as far as the OSP is concerned, every time a matter rears its head, the chorus appears to be, hey, you again, we are waiting to hear more, we're waiting to see some more action. And so this is another list or another one of the cases on the OSP's table. How it is dealt with will be very telling as far as public confidence is concerned. It's something that is, I think we shouldn't take for granted, the confidence in the institutions that are mandated to deal with corruption. The average Ghanaian is asking, why so slow? Sometimes it appears. Why so slow? Where is the action? What's happening? What's next?
Exactly.
So we keep a keen eye on this one especially, but we have answers. Even when I think about the National Cathedral, which has been catapulted back into the spotlight, and the numerous issues. Listen, I can sit here and list a litany of issues that have still been left hanging, and this is everybody's money. Media, my money is inside. I know that. That's why I'm keenly interested in that. The decisions that governments make directly affect my quality of life, my well-being. Right. So I join the chorus and ask, okay, we're hearing today, there's a warrant out, this is out, accusations flying, and so on and so forth. Once we start to see some finality to some of these big ticket cases, I think we will have more confidence in the process. For now, it feels like it's just, hey, have you heard about the latest, hey, one day, one scandal, 1 week, one scandal, and then it's kind of left hanging. So I think some conclusion and finality will bring about more confidence.
If you talk to if you monitor the Office of the Special Prosecutor and some of the presses that they've had in not so distant past, they seem to make the strong suggestion that these cases have not been left to hang. We are still on them. You remember when the Special Prosecutor held a press conference? I think it was Elvis Darko of the New Center who had a back and forth with the Office of the Special Prosecutor, and then the Special Prosecutor says, look, the information that we was the press on the
Kenoforia side.
Yes.
And they said, what you think you know, you actually don't know. We are by this informing you that A is happening, B is happening, C is that. So the OSP's posture seems to suggest that we have not left these things. But you see, we are not looking for efforts, because that's not what we are measuring.
Efforts.
We are looking for results.
Exactly.
Mind you, there have been 2 special prosecutors. And if you remember what was said back in the day, before we had our very first special prosecutor, Mr. Martin Amido, it was to stamp corruption in right there and stop it and uproot it. Now, how many cases did Mr. Martin Amido close? And how many has what do you call Kiseja been closed? In fact, the Mama Ayariga conversation was there. Duji was in court on behalf of him, and he walked free because they couldn't find any probable cause against him really. But we are not looking at measuring efforts. We are spending employ people at the OSP. They recently had a polygraph test for all their staff. All of those things. It costs us a lot of money.
And somebody was leaking filler.
Yes, they will bring in FBI people and all of that, buy armored vehicles, and it costs us a lot of money. Are we getting value for money from the OSP's office? It's a legitimate question that must be asked and answered. Because if the office is supposed to help us to fight corruption,
those of you who
every single day, you see corruption stuff happening around you. You must.
Yeah, because people are bringing FBI.
Those of you who are looking for value for money, how is your success? How do you measure the success of the office?
Jailing people.
So if they don't jail, then they are not working.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Actually,
but I'm saying
that's
that
the expectation of a lot of people.
I'm saying that, look, in the case of Mahama Ayariga, for example, the OSP thought, okay, there's something that should hold you. They went into it. Mahama Ayariga, I'm saying, in the case of Charles Bisu as well, he went to court. He also got his day of honor. He said, and then OSP backed off. Mahama Ayariga walked off. That would take a box out of how many boxes?
So it's about going to court. You are not necessarily looking for a conviction.
Not necessarily going to court. But if you, for example, in case of the National Cathedral, where monies were released without parliamentary approval, that matter should have been done and dusted a long time ago, like yesterday. It is not about showing up in court and with how many lawyers you have and all of that. Because a lot of money that we have, for example, paid $81 million for Sputnik V vaccines that we did not get. Who authorized the payment?
I don't want to do OSP.
Yeah, by the corruption and corruption-related activities. That's what their office is supposed to be looking at. Corruption and corruption-related activities.
For me, that is exactly how I would measure the success if I see yes. And I say this because year in and year out, we're told that the Ghanaian economy is losing out massively to corruption. We have a basket or a bucket full of holes, and all the money is escaping because persons in positions of power are just chopping the money. You set up an office of the special prosecutor and tool it with the necessary tooling. Well, now it is, because previously that was the gripe, that it wasn't necessarily tooled as well as it could be. If you have FBI coming in and polygraph and a day training and massive resources, yes, as an everyday Ghanaian, I would absolutely like to see a jail term or 10. And also some recuperations so that it can go back into our coffers so that I can stop suffering.
I am on the website of the OSP,
right.
And I'm looking at the cases it is investigating. So there's the Ajenim Boateng J case,
Right.
Airbus SC, Bank of Ghana, Cecilia Dapa, Center for National Culture, then Charles Adubuahen, Charles Bisu, Customs Division of the Revenue Authority, Electricity Company of Ghana, and the Beijing Jiaocheng Technology, Estate of Kojo Usufrie, Elias John, Gaming Commission of Ghana.
That matter too is still there.
It's still there. I'm seeing it at the cases portion of the website. Ghana Medical and Dental Council, Ghana Police Service, Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Bonded Warehouse. There's Ghana Revenue Authority, Tata Consulting Services, Ghana Water Company Limited. There's Joabin MC nominee, Kenneth Yao Oforiata, Mahama Yariga. Some of the cases have been closed.
Joabin MC nominee, you remember the guy?
The
Yes,
guy
yes,
said,
yes.
look, I gave you money.
He said it's called "Thank you for wasting time on me."
Yeah.
I'll never forget.
Return the
I'll
money.
never forget
So
that
the
one.
guy,
That's like 4 years ago.
the guy
Yes.
spoke and said, look,
So actually 5 years ago.
Five years
I
ago.
gave you money. You didn't vote for me. And mind you, we had to wait for 9 months before we got those nominees from a government swapping with itself, contrary to Act 936, our local government law. What is the OSP waiting again? Nothing convicts a man faster than his own words.
Investigations take time.
He himself came to say on video. In fact, he didn't know that he was being recorded.
No.
But he said it, that look, I gave you money. Give me my money back if you didn't vote for, because that was about the third
But
time
you
that
cannot
was
secretly record a man and use it against him.
Oh, unless of course he's caught in the commission of a crime, my lord.
But this is what we are now to determine whether it is a crime.
But
He
that's
said
the
it's called
prima
"Thank
facie.
you."
The
We
video is
called
the
him
prima
on the
facie.
show. He said we asked him. I think Alfred was there. He said it's called "Thank you for wasting time on me."
Yeah.
That was what the money was for. But Sixtus, back to your point, right? Because I think it's important. You're asking whether or not we can only or solely measure the success of the OSP by convictions. I would say, in theory, it should be that if you see that the OSP is initiating cases, it will serve as a deterrent. It will send the right signals. That should be enough for the citizenry to know that, okay, there is some work on the ground that is going towards even prevention. But after a while, when you hear of a multitude of cases that seem to have no finality, even that particular function of serving as a deterrent, even by way of initiations, start to lose its power. Because just gauge the mood and temperature when we hear of another scandal or another story. It's like the latest gist. It comes and it goes.
Maybe.
Because there's no finality to it. For me, I am measuring it by that. If it was the case that the few cases that started off was beginning to put some kind of fear in our public officials, we're hearing less of that. But in fact, the more cases are initiated, the more that follow. It appears there's no stopping it.
Helen, how about if we, the people, we get too excited when we hear these allegations, when maybe there's no, proper case there. When
There's
we hear
really nothing to
there's
it.
really nothing to it. When we hear corruption, our eyes are open, the hairs on our skin are standing up, and all of that. But when the OSP begins investigating,
You realize
there's nothing, because
or even the amounts involved are really
the Airbus SC. So on August 2024, the office presented its findings regarding investigations into alleged bribery involving high-ranking Ghanaian officials, notably former President Mahama and Airbus SC. So the summary of the case is that after thorough investigations, the OSP found no evidence of bribery involving Foster, Mahama, or any other public officials. It was concluded that there was no basis to charge any individual in relation to the alleged bribery scheme. Consequently, the OSP decided to close the investigation and announced that no criminal proceedings would be initiated. So the OSP did this.
But you see, you remember
before it finished, we were all in a frenzy.
No, because the former OSP, remember, had issued a Interpol red alert, right? On somebody who lives, I'm told, close to the Interpol office. But we never brought the person in. And it is also instructive to mention that
the person's house is just behind the window of the Interpol.
The former president, even though if you check our indemnity clauses in the Constitution, is not supposed to be on trial of any sort. He submitted himself for investigations. You understand? But again, it comes back to the earlier point I made. We turned this whole Airbus thing into a political football, Where later a deputy director of communications of a political party said he deliberately introduced that into the conversation. You remember? Also been passed so that it would what do you call it? Prune down the votes that exactly. So rightly, as I'm saying, the OSP may be doing its work, but if we allow the politicization of issues of national importance, mind you, the former special prosecutor in his corruption assessment risk of the Ejapa deal, right? He said in it that the law that was used as basis to even go and start the agreement with the South African was literally non-existent, because at the time the president had not assented to it to make it a law. Was that corruption? That's one. In that same report, even though nobody had asked him to give us a brief on the Airbus, he found it necessary to put it in there. Now, the issues that emanated, and you remember the back and forth with Mr. Martin Amidu and Eugene Ahin at the presidency. Yeah. Eugene Ahin, I remember in 2020, towards the election, said, they have an election to win. When they finish, they will respond. Martin Amidu brought a 44-page, 44 paragraph response, and then that was it. So we have left that matter. If anybody picks that matter now, as the new OSP picks the matter now, people will say he's witch hunting people. But the
Sixtus and Helen, how do we?
Let me give you another example. Okay. The statement you made. The Cecilia Dapa matter also comes to mind. When the matter came up, everybody was excited. They are making noise, left, right, center. Every media house, every newspaper, every portal, every blogger. But you see, there was an important question that we were not asking, and came up a number of times. Whether that money belongs to us, whether it was ill-gotten money, whether it was gotten out of some corruption or corruption-related deals, and all of that. I'm using that example also to buttress the point you made earlier, that there are a lot of the times that cases will come up because of the political influence. We go at those cases, we take a dig at them, we want to tear them apart and all of that. But really, if you ask the questions that would actually be asked and answered in court, you see that OSP probably even have no jurisdiction. Yeah. You see, because the jurisdiction of the OSP is clear cut.
And that's what the attorney generals, right from
I'm not saying that, disclaimer, I'm not saying that Cecilia Dapa matter OSP has no
right. Yes. No, that's not what you're saying. But that's why you find that sometimes the attorney generals think that the man is overstepping his boundaries, so he's not supposed to be. And they have also insisted so many times that we have the power to arrest and charge you. We don't need. So which is which? Because if we will see that turf war, that turf war is not in the interest of the Ghanaian person.
No.
Because, like Helen is suggesting, we want closure. We want the issues to end. We want some money to be retrieved. Like how everybody is excited about Operation Recover or Loot. Now they said they have gathered everything. They say they are going to give it to the OSP and the relevant bodies, Attorney General, blah, blah, blah.
They have given, actually.
Yes.
AG says it is also studying and will.
Can we be getting updates on those ones? Because it's not enough to come and scream and say, we have found something. This one is corrupt. Is this, that. If we don't take care, we may be hanging people in the public space without really finding. By the time they go through the process, you would have damaged their names.
Exactly.
By the time they go through the process, you would have damaged them altogether. So we need to be very careful.
Or on the flip side, by the time we realize, people will think, okay, let me just be in the public news for a bit of kokonsa for 4 weeks, maybe 4 months. And then once I have my millions, after all, a trip to the Barbados can cure a week of slander. Maldives, even. Let me go to Maldives and relax after being slandered and, disparaged online. It could go either way because people do need finality to have. But what is the deterrence? If I come into office tomorrow, what is my deterrence?
This is why I am also one of those who believe that we need to egg the OSP into our constitution from the processes that are ongoing. It is not enough having a legislation establishing the OSP and also allowing the OSP draw its powers from the Office of the Attorney General. Minded that in this country, the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice has been turned into a political tool. That the AG becomes advisor to government on all government businesses. And I'm sure if you are even stretching it, there are times that the AG will advise the president or key government officials and functionaries on their personal deals and transactions if we are stretching the matter. You see, but since we don't have any evidence to that effect, we can't stretch it. So let us begin to provide or give true meaning to the independence of the office of the special prosecutor.
But the sisters,
by making constitutional provisions for it, so that it has its own powers, it draws on itself by itself, it leans on itself. If it is falling, it falls on its own sword. And then we can also begin to talk about the processes of appointing the OSP. The amount of political autonomy that office should be guaranteed, so that the office will grow to be like Shraj, that we don't need the political head of the day to appoint the special prosecutor. Even if that is going to be the case, there will be a laid down process for the appointment and removal of the OSP.
I think that's guaranteed. The OSP now has what? Protection of tenure.
Yes, there's protection of tenure. But I'm saying that the surest way to ensure all of this will be to give it a mention in the Constitution. So that it does not lie within the powers of anybody to get up and say, okay, this office, we can change this, we can change this, you can't be this.
I have a question here. So when it comes to the deliverables that we're all talking about, and that is briefly before we get onto the phone lines to have a conversation, we're talking about the deliverables. Since you spoke about how long investigations take, and then we're also trying to balance it with the expectations that people have to know that the office is working. So how do we marry the two? You go to the website, some cases have been on since 2019. They are still on the stage of investigation. Prosecution has not even started. You understand? Should we begin looking at, a certain kind of envelope to ensure that it is speed, there's some levels of speed.
Dedicated courts, that's one.
Tribunals, maybe. However, we should also not compromise on the innocence of the accused persons before the investigations conclude.
Something happened in Parliament. The former health minister before Bernard Okoboy, the Sputnik v. Chobo, my former member of Parliament for Doma Central. He himself,
Ajimamenu.
Yes, because Ajimamenu, he himself was under oath, right? And he told everybody that he had not done what he came back later to say under oath that he had done. You don't need any other thing again.
So he was under pressure.
Yes, but
COVID brought a different spirit. Everybody was panicking.
Yeah, but we all watched the Thursday where he vehemently said that it's a lie. We have not made any payment, and then he comes back to say, "Oh, I wasn't thinking straight. We had made some payment." That is perjury,
right?
True.
You were under
oath. If you
oath.
want to stretch it to the portions where he should have ticked all the boxes before he got into a contract, that's where you bring OSP in. Is Parliament as an institution, from the 7th to the 8th to now to the 9th Parliament, are they willing to hand over him or were they willing to hand him over? That's what I spoke about, institutional collaboration.
Johnny,
because
still on institutional collaboration, you know the Andiapia could be rich businessman trying to buy the minority case. That one the case has been closed because Apia Kubi says he will not tell you who.
Yeah, but it doesn't lie in his mouth to come
invited to, and he's appeared before.
He has. So if you visit the
website,
is it
listed there?
Yes, it's listed there that the case may be reopened as we speak. The case is closed
because
the case may be reopened under different circumstances. That is, if Apia Kubi decides to tell you who the businessman, because he's the principal witness.
No, so he should be compelled to tell all of us who the businessman is, because if he can he not be declared as a hostile witness to tell us all? Because this matter,
that's what I'm reading here right now.
You see, at the end of the day, somebody within the institution of Parliament, and mind you, the reason we created this whole 3 arms thing is to have checks and balances.
True.
Now, if we cannot get checks and balances from the institutions that are supposed to be checking up on each other and
balancing each other,
OSP is a creation of the executive arm, right? So the creation of the executive arm, which has now been given legal backing.
So involving the judiciary now.
Exactly. It involves the judiciary now. And then the parliament that passed the OSP law, they don't want to be releasing people who, I mean, what are we doing? Are we really fighting corruption, or we are pretending to be fighting corruption?
You get the lawyers. The lawyers will come and explain big English. Is there evidence?
Some days shall mean mandatory.
The OSP speech,
leave it to the lawyers. The lawyers will come and break down big English.
Investigation showed that a well-known businessman did. In fact,
the lawyers are not there. The lawyers in the same country, if you like, caught 2 of them. Somebody will say shall is mandatory. Somebody will say shall is not mandatory.
That is why you will take one matter to the High Court.
Anyways,
based on the law, the judge at the High Court will say you have won. Then the aggrieved party will go to the Court of Appeal.
Right.
Based on the same law, the Court of Appeal will say no, the High Court judge
one day we'll talk about this, the over-legalization of every single thing. When sometimes common sense is staring all of us in the face, they will gather all the lawyers and tell you, meanwhile, you and I, everyday citizen, we are watching, you and I are watching things unfold. But the lawyers will line up and then come and give us big.
Hold on, let's talk to you.
The same lawyers that give us legal education, we call them. So when you see shall, means that it must happen. When another matter comes and you call some of them, they say, oh, this shall
is discretionary.
It's like me.
Let's have a conversation. Let's speak with Samuel Harrison Kujo. He's programs officer of He's programs officer of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition. Mr. Kujo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'm sure you have followed the conversations concerning the OSP's charges against Charles Bisu and the position of Mr. Charles Bisu, who is the former secretary of the defunct Inter-Ministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. First of all, when you got to know about this case, how was your reaction like?
Good morning to you, Noble, and good morning to your listeners. I think that this Charles Bisu case has dragged on for far too long. We have had a lot of what I would call legal gymnastics, going on. We go to a human rights court. We come back. It's dragged on for too long. But finally, we have seen the OSP now formally charge him with something to do with a corruption-related activity, and he would have to have his day in court and answer the questions. I think that on the whole, the OSP's work has not been helped by, I should say, the posture of our judiciary.
I see. How do you mean by that?
Yes. So we have had too many cases sitting in court. We have cases that judgment should have been given that has not been given. For example, the potential NPE person who gave bribes and was recorded on video asking for his bribes. The last time a judgment was supposed to be given, the judge was transferred on the day of the judgment. And when we raised issues, we were told that, well, it's a routine transfer and that a new judge has come in. We were told that judgment would have been given in January. We are now in April, ending April, going into May. We don't know. I mean, the judiciary hasn't told us when they are going to give a judgment on that case. Like, when it comes to fighting corruption, some of these things help. When people see that people have been punished for their roles in corruption-related activity, it helps. You know, it encourages people to report more acts of corruption. It helps to put other people on their toes. But when we have a judiciary that now we don't really know exactly what the status is with the case, they haven't communicated anything to the OSP or to the Ghanaian public, it makes it difficult, you know, fighting against corruption. I think that, again, this Charles Bisu case has dragged on for this was a case that, I mean, the judiciary, and that's also the reason why we have been calling for a special anti-corruption court, right? So that we have a court dedicated to these cases. We can quickly go through the cases. Whoever is not culpable, we set them free. Whoever is culpable, we punish them. Then we see that we are making a headway in the fight against corruption. So now people's biggest hit against the OSP is that Onukra, since Obayano, why not watching a two? Who has he been able to arrest? Who has he been able to jail? And it is because we have a judicial system that I don't know whether it is slow or... So I feel that this Charles Bisu case has dragged on for too long. It is nice that finally he has been charged with something and he will have his day in court to answer for whatever it is. But I think that all of us, whether we are the judiciary or we are the legislature or we are civil society, we ought to play our role in making sure that the OSP succeeds in the fight against corruption.
But while we attempt to make the OSP succeed in its fight, there's the concern you're raising about, you know, the court system may be grinding very slowly. That's fair enough. But Charles Bisu, for instance, he has maintained his innocence since the beginning of the investigations, the beginning of the Galamsey fraud documentary. So if we were to hasten or quicken the process up, is there not a risk of pronouncing people guilty when, in fact, they may maintain or truly they may think they are innocent?
Okay, so if the person has maintained has been shouting his innocence since the beginning of this case, then why don't we go to court so that the evidence that sustains the charge is put out for everybody to know, and then finally, when the court agrees with him, he is set free? Why do we now have to go to a human rights court on a different matter and then come back on another matter? I join the case again. I mean, asking that the case be expedited doesn't mean that we are going to look evidence that points to somebody's innocence, right? But what we are saying is that when these cases take too long, what it does is to dampen the zeal in the fight against fraud. It just tells Ghanaians that, once that happens, people are not motivated to either come up and report corruption or even stay out of corruption because they feel that, this one, when we go to court, what would happen? It will just be a lot of adjournment. And then people are emboldened to engage in acts of corruption. For example, I keep asking, who in this country has been jailed for either misapplying or misappropriating public funds? We see the Auditor General's report every year. Who has been punished for misapplying or basically wasting state resources? We haven't seen anything like that. So every year, the Auditor General keeps reporting unrestricted payments without going through gift lists. We keep seeing the same things every day. because we are not punishing them. So I'm saying that when we expedite these cases, it is going to help to, get people behind the fight. I'm not saying we should overlook evidence that will point to people's innocence, but this slope is discouraging, really.
And Samuel, let's now talk about specifically this charges against Mr. Bisu and his response. So going forward, what should happen? What do you expect to see?
Well, I think that the OSP has his marbles lined up for him. He wouldn't have given that charge if he was not sure he had enough evidence to prosecute that case. So, as always, we are going to be following the issues as they play out in court. It is our hope that this will not take another 3 years period before we get to a conclusion, but we will see this case being concluded quick enough. Apart from that, we still believe that all of us have to put our weight behind the OSP in prosecuting the agenda. Yesterday, I was listening to the OSP at the Constitutional Review Committee where he was talking about the fact that when we needed to shore up human rights, we gave it a mention in our Constitution, but we forgot to talk about corruption, and now we have a bigger problem to deal with. I think that all of us have to look at supporting the OSP, and if getting the OSP mentioned or being enshrined in our Constitution is the best way, then let us do that so that we fight against corruption. Otherwise, corruption would graduate into an even bigger problem that we would not be able to handle. I think that we have seen all the state failures around us. We have seen all the coup d'etats around us. We like to think that Ghana is beyond such a thing, but I think that if we do not tackle the issue of corruption, we may end up deceiving ourselves and regressing on all the advances we have made with regards to our democracy. So let's support the OSP to prosecute this fight against corruption. I think that's the best thing we can do.
And Samuel, this whole thing began with the Galamsey fraud documentary by Tiger IPI. Now, the man in question, I'm talking about Mr. Bisu, he's urging the Office of the Special Prosecutor to present, number 1, a complete, number 2, unedited, number 3, an altered version of that investigative video underpinning the prosecution. He says it is essential to ensure that the truth is revealed in its entirety without manipulation. I'm sure this is a fair expectation or a fair request he has to make. Don't you think so?
Well, I don't think that it lies in Mr. Bisu's power to ask for these things. If the court asks that the OSP produce the unedited, unadulterated videos, then yes, but Mr. Bisu does not have the power to compel the OSP. I mean, he has been to court so many times. If he feels that is what is going to help him, then I think that he should have made a prayer to the court that I need the OSP to produce these unedited tapes and all of that. So it's not within his power to do that. If he feels that's what he wants, then he should go to court and make the argument, and then let's see if the court grants his request. For me, what I think is that in fighting against corruption, we should not overlook any evidence that may point to a person's innocence. But we should also not countenance any request that would exist in this way, obfuscation, right? Anything that looks like let's confuse the issue or waste everybody's time so that this issue would die out. So yes, he can say that. I mean, in a conversation with his friends, but he cannot compel the OSP to provide these unless he has gone to court and the court agrees and says that the OSP should provide those things.
And Samuel, finally from me before you go, Mr. Bisu is also pointing out to the timing of the charges, noting that the prosecution is being pursued under a new administration distinct from the one in which he served. Is there any cause of concern, or are his concerns, valid in this regard?
Okay, so please understand. Is he saying that being prosecuted in a new government, there is a compromise, or what exactly is Mr. Bisu's claim? Because I know that in Ghana, what we call a statute of limitation. So it doesn't matter when a crime was committed. Once it comes to the attention of the state, you could be prosecuted for it. It doesn't mean that if a prosecution started under NPP and now we have an NDC government, we should either stop the prosecution or restart the... I don't understand exactly what Mr.
Samuel, let me read to you exactly what he said in his statement. He said, the timing of this prosecution occurring under a different government than the one in which I previously served shows the importance of impartial judicial proceedings. It is my sincere hope that this process will allow all parties an equitable opportunity to present evidence and that the facts will be evaluated fairly without bias. Those are his words.
Well, yes, in this case, he has said what is right. Let's go to court. Let's put the evidence out there and let's make the court decide. I don't think he's even have mentioned the prosecution happening in a different government. For me, I don't see the point, But well, yes, let's allow the court to make the determination, and hopefully we see a quick determination so that we can put this issue to rest.
Samuel, thank you so much for your time with us on the program.
You're welcome.
Samuel Harrison Kujo is Programs Officer of the Ghana Anti-Corruption Coalition, speaking with us there.